Alright, we've got Mommas Ipod repair part 3. Got the battery in here. It's time to put it back together and see whether it's going to work. So for starts, I need to solder the battery on. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to tin these 3 connectors a little bit and to clean them up. And I'm going to suck the solder back off with this copper braid. Looks like I need to crank the heat a little bit. Okay, looks good. So, looks like that lines up. I'm going to put a little solder on each one of these pads. See if I can squish that connector into it. Okay, that feels pretty good. Okay, so next up, I need to put the screw back in the back facing camera. So it has a little bracket like that. Oops. It did have a little bracket like that. Okay, well it is gone now. I think it's pretty much hopeless to find that, so we will forge ahead. Trying to get this little screw in this right spot. That maybe will hold it, or maybe that camera won't work very well after this. I'm noticing there's a lot of junk around the edge here that's going to need to be cleaned off. It's not going to lay flush. So that stuff's going to need to be cleaned off. I think before I work too hard on that, I'd like to verify that the thing works, because if it turns out not to work, there's not a lot of reason to have spent too much time cleaning things up. So this connector is the tricky one here. So this connector goes underneath here. And since we can't really see it, it's hard to tell when it's lined up. There we go. Oop, that felt like it was right. It's either the feeling of destroying it or the feeling of plugging it in, one or the other. Looks like it's lined up. Okay, that looks to be plugged in. So I can kind of see the reason why they had the copper tape wrapped around that. It was just because they didn't want it to come out. Okay, so that's the first connector. And this other one is facing right side up. And I'm going to take off this protective cover because it's in the way. Or at least I'm going to cut it back so that it's not in the way. Okay, that's plugged in. And let's see here. Aha. So it looks like I might be missing something here. So this home button goes in here, like that. Then this piece lays in here. So this looks like it hooks to the back of the front-facing camera. So I'm just going to set this on here, and we'll power it up, see whether we have an iPod still. Okay, that looks like it's kind of together. Let's see what happens. So I believe that this is the button to start it up. We've got our Apple logo here. This should be a cold boot. Looks like the battery's got enough juice in it to boot, or at least start to boot. Okay, touch screen works. Let's see, it looks like the battery is about half gone. Everything seems to work. Let's see if we can listen to a book on tape. I guess we should see whether the network works. Looking at a Jeffrey Archer novel.
Winter of Ipod. Dear God, I hope not. I can't be sure how I would have gotten through these lonely months without your support. Looking forward to seeing you. Love, Kate.
See whether the volume control
The
works.
night before she was due to arrive, William promised himself that he would not rush her into anything that either of them might later regret. As he told Matthew, it was impossible to assess the extent to which her feelings after her husband's death. I've never heard of such rubbish, said Matthew. You're in love, and that's an end of it. The moment William spotted Kate getting off the train from Miami and saw the infectious smile that lit up her face, he abandoned his cautious intention.
Okay, that looks good. So I'm going to power it back down. Actually, I'm gonna see if it takes a charge before I put it any farther back together. So this connector should plug in. Looks like it's not quite there yet. Lots of residual glue that keeps wanting to re-stick on this. So this 37 pin connector needs to be squished a little bit. Wow, significant amount of heat comes off the back of that thing. Oh, look at that. There's a... Don't know whether I leave that on or not. I suspect that this is something I'm supposed to take off. Okay. Let's give it some USB power. Looks like the accelerometer is still working because orientation goes. So the battery is, looks like it's going down fast. Let's give it some juice. Cool. It says it's charging. So that appears to all be good. Let me power this down. Let's power it down all the way. So far, so good. I don't know why it restarted. I guess I can, while it's doing that, I can be peeling off this nasty tape that's on here. We power it back down. Okay, so the next step, I've got no spare parts in there, I believe. Is to, I think this needs to be stuck up onto here. I think it's probably a ground of some kind. Doesn't really look very sticky. It's a matter of putting in a bunch of screws. So let's begin. So this thing, this cover goes on. Sticks down to that. It's got a little tiny spring there that I assume must touch in that corner to, again, to electrically connect the front and the back. I've got my board of screws here. Okay, starting at the bottom left. And since it's pretty boring to watch me put all these screws in, let's call this the end of part 3. And try to get something more interesting to look at. We'll continue from there.